Hi everyone, it's Nikki here and welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, I am an author and editor and I post videos here on YouTube about writing, editing, reading and all the things I love. Today is a reading day because it's the end of the month, so I need to share with you a few thoughts on some of the books that I've been reading during June. This has actually been a huge bumper reading month for me and I've gotten through 22 books. It occurred to me that this is going to make the video ridiculously long. So what I've decided to do is do this month as a two-parter. So I'll be posting on the 29th part 1 with half the books, and on the 30th I'll post part 2 with the rest. So I hope you'll bear with me, but I just thought it was better to do it in two slightly shorter ones than go for something too epic that no one's going to have the time to sit and watch. Before I carry on, I'll also just do a little announcement that we are halfway through the year, so I thought I should check in on my Goodreads goal. And I'm really thrilled to say that by tomorrow, because I've got one book I'm finishing off tonight, I will be at 100 books. My goal for the year was 150, so I'm doing really well on that. I don't think I'll quite get to 200. I don't think I'll read 100 in the next 6 months again, because I do have a few fairly hefty longer ones to get through in that time as well. But I should definitely, obviously, pass my goal of 150. So we're all looking really, really good. And really great to be at that 100 mark. Without any further ado, I'm going to kick straight into the books to try and keep this as short as possible considering the amount I've got to discuss. The first book here on my list is The Day the Sun Changed Colours by Scott Talbot Evans. This was a book I received from the author who was requesting reviews. It's sci-fi, and I don't usually read sci-fi, and I was tempted to say no, but he had said it was comedy, and I do enjoy sci-fi comedy like Red Dwarf, Hitchhiker's Guide, so I decided to give it a try. It ended up being a 3-star read for me. It was funny. The basic premise is that in the future, all the stuff that's problematic these days, equality, talking of gender, sexuality, any problems like that, racism, they're all gone. And people were thriving, but they kind of lived their life based around what the computers and robots do for them. Then one day they discover the sun is going to crash into Earth, burn it up. So they have to escape. And suddenly all the things that they thought they knew are wrong. They need to try and get off the planet, but the sun is making the sky change colour, and as the sky changes colour, they're becoming aggressive, irritable and experiencing all these emotions that have been eradicated for centuries. So it was very funny. I liked the satire, I liked the comedy. However, there was an awful lot of science talk in there as well. And for anyone who knows me, science has never really been my thing. I don't know how I got double B at GCSE, honestly, because I've always been pretty useless at it. And I found that a little bit too much. However, if you're someone who enjoys sci-fi and enjoys all the science talk, then you probably would really enjoy it. So it was 3 stars for me, but for other people who are more hardcore sci-fi fans, you probably would like it. The next one was a 5-star read, and that's Maurice by Ian Foster. I'm not sure why I've never gotten to Maurice before this, but because I have read a lot of Foster's other works, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant portrayal of the difficulties the gay young man was facing in Edwardian society. It was beautiful, really sensual. I would like to see the Merchant Ivory film, although I'm sure they've probably castrated a lot of the sexuality given how Merchant Ivory's other Ian Foster films went, but I would definitely like to try and see it at some point. But it's an absolutely wonderful book and definitely one I want to return to in the future. Next up was The Ultimate Job Search by Lynn Williams. This was a NetGalley read and I gave it 4 stars. It was really useful, lots of great tips, beautifully formatted, easy to find information. It was certainly useful for me at the moment because it helped me discover that how we're meant to lay out our CVs has changed again. It seems that every few years the preference for formatting CVs completely alters and I have to redo mine from scratch. So it was definitely a helpful read in terms of pointing out things that have changed over the years that I wasn't aware of. Next I read Demonology by King James I. This was a 3-star read for me. I was just interested in what he had to say on it, but it was hardly thrilling. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars just essentially for historical interest and value, but I didn't find it a riveting read in any way. Next up, a 4-star read from NetGalley, The Victorian Lady's Guide to Fashion and Beauty by Mimi Matthews. I enjoyed this. It was a great informative quick guide, and it looked at women's fashion as it changed through the decades. And it did take a decade at a time and gave really detailed information. Sorry, I got a bit distracted then. There was a cat walking past my window. Anyway, but back to Victorian fashion. Yes, really detailed information with some pictures. I perhaps would have liked a few more pictures to illustrate, but there were some there just to give you some ideas of how the fashions they were describing looked. And then later on they went and did the same thing with beauty. How did people wear their hair? What kind of makeup was in vogue? So definitely informative read. It was only fairly short, a couple of 100 pages, so it wasn't exhaustive, but as a quick guide it'd be really useful, and I'm sure it'll appeal to anyone who's into history and historic dress, and particularly authors who are looking for authenticity in their historical fiction. Next up, another 5-star read, Fish Can Sing by Halldór Laxness. You'll all have heard me rave about Halldór Laxness on here before. I absolutely adore him. He's an Icelandic author, writing in the 20th century. Absolutely wonderful. Everything about his works I adore. He always has these amazing descriptive prose, but with a lot of wry humour, and you get a real wonderful sense of place. You really get to feel for Iceland and its people through the stories, and this one was no exception. It was really evocative, funny. Basic premise is this young man called Afgrímur, whose life becomes entailed with that of Iceland, a famous Icelandic singer who appears and disappears again throughout the narrative, whose name is Gavaholm. And Afgrímur kind of becomes embroiled in what's going on with Gutha. And I don't want to say too much. I'm just worried about ruining it if I say too much. But essentially, it's a look at the idea of fame and what that means when you come from a fairly enclosed society and enclosed community. Next up, the Byline Bible, Susan Shapiro, and this is another NetGalley read, and it's another 4-star read for me. And it's basically looking at how do you start selling articles and get your byline in journals, magazines, newspapers and the like. I was interested in this because I'm always looking out for possible new income streams to do with writing, and I thought maybe this kind of writing would work for me, but having read the book I don't think it will, because I think it's going to involve far too much time. The book sort of was talking about all the research you needed to do, both for your article itself but also into all the publications, all the reading and things like that, and I don't think I have the spare time to commit to it. So although the book wasn't for me, it was really handy, full of useful tips, again nicely laid out, easy to read, easy to find information. So if you are considering doing that kind of writing, non-fiction writing, then it's definitely worth looking at. And connected to that one, also another NetGalley read, was the Writer's Digest Guide to Magazine Article Writing by Kerry Flanagan. Another 4 stars. As with the Byline Bible, really useful tips, nicely laid out, nicely presented, easy to read. This one I found a little bit more helpful to me because it did include a section on how, if you're a writer, how do you turn your fictional story into a series of articles and things as well, and talking about writing blog posts and things like that. So from that point of view, that it was a little bit more useful to me personally than the Byline Bible, but both of them were really good guides if you're looking for that kind of work and want a few tips. Next up, A Collar for Cerberus by Matt Stanley. This one I received from the publisher as an ebook in return for the review, and it was a 5-star read for me. And the premise of this story was that a young man's on holiday in Greece, and he goes to the village where his idol, an author, lives, and he wants to meet him and, commune with his idol. And the story basically revolves around the ideas of never meet your idols. He discovers that he's not quite how he thought he was going to be, and he ends up going on this huge road trip with the guy around Greece, and learns a lot about himself along the way. Really beautiful story, a very thoughtful treatise on life, really. What do you want from life? How do you want to live your life? What's important? Next up, Travelling in the Dark by Emma Tippany. And this is a NetGalley read, 3.5 stars from me. It's a short story / novella, really, about a woman who's returned home to New Zealand with her son after a period of separation, living overseas. And as they travel to get to meet up with a former friend of hers, she's reliving what led her to leave in the first place, the events that led up to her departure. It's an interesting piece. However, I was never completely compelled by it. I didn't feel a deep connection to her and her story. And finally, for this first part, I have the Word of All Souls trilogy companion book by Deborah Harkness. This is a 4.5 star read for me. And this is a book for those who like her All Souls trilogy, Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night and The Book of Life. I'm a huge fan of these stories, which are now being turned into a TV series. It will premiere on Sky in the UK in September, I think. So I'm really anxious to see it as soon as I can. And this companion book basically looks at the inspiration behind the stories, the history, the folklore, a bit of a behind the scenes into the writing of the story and the meaning and themes and things like that. As such, it's a really lovely book, beautifully presented, lovely illustrations, and it probably won't mean anything if you haven't read the books, so you do need to be a fan of the trilogy to appreciate it, but if you are a fan, as I said, 4.5 stars, a wonderful read. So I'm going to end there for now, but I'll come back again tomorrow to run through the other 11 books for you. I'll see you all again then. Bye for now, everyone.